Greetings, dear hearts. Welcome to the online global conference, Dreaming the New Earth, co-creating the sovereign, resilient humanity of the future, where we're gathering with wisdom keepers and practitioners from around the world and from a variety of fields of expertise who are in service to the global awakening of consciousness and to supporting people and our planet during these times of great change. During this time together, we will tune into the potent wisdom and experiences they will be offering, which will serve as guidance for us to ground our personal and our collective vision of the new earth. We will learn about the significance of these times of prophecy we're in, come to feel a deeper sense of community, belonging, and interconnection with all our relations, as well as learn how we can trust our own inner wisdom and gain insight into how to heal that which may be holding us back from walking our true path, individually and as a collective. A path that supports and protects the continuance of life. I'm your host and creator of this event, Clara Nisiri, and today I'm very excited to present Kedar Brown. Welcome, Kedar. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It's a real gift and pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. Kedar is the founder and director of Rites of Passage Council, an organization offering nature immersion ceremonial encampments around the world. He's an internationally known ceremonialist, healer, intuitive, and teacher of psychological and spiritual awareness with over 35 years of professional experience. Over this time, Kedar has developed an effective and unique approach to emotional and spiritual healing by braiding together his depth of clinical knowledge of experiential psychotherapies with more nature-based indigenous wisdom teachings and healing methods from around the world. In 1994, Kedar apprenticed with Stephen Foster and Meredith Little at School of Lost Borders in Sierra Nevada mountains in the form and process of the Vision Quest ceremony and eco-psychology. He has also apprenticed for many years with Malidoma Somé, initiated elder and shaman of the Dagara tribe of Burkina Faso in West Africa. Kedar has also had the honor and privilege to learn many valuable insights into healing from his apprenticeship with Cherokee elder and medicine person Will Rockingbear. And there's a testimonial by Malidoma Patrice Somé, author, teacher, and tribal elder of the Dagara people of West Africa, that I'd like to also include here. That says, I have known Kedar for a long time as a man of spirit with remarkable devotion to healing. He tends to his duty with royalty and ferocious commitment. As a man who hears the call of earth and nature, Kedar extends his hand to those in quest of change and transformation and is always willing to lead them into and guide them through a deep sense of communion with themselves. Having worked with him in a number of rituals and ceremonies and watched carefully the way he gives of himself to spirit, I've come to respect his priestly devotion to the sacred in nature and in every human. His work deserves respect and reverence. Beautiful.
Thank you,
So,
Clara.
would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I'd like to start in a way of gratitude and honoring, an invocation um, to the other realms, to invite them into this global ceremonial circle at this moment. So as we begin, I invite you to close your eyes and send your spirit to your favorite place in nature and see yourself standing there at sunrise, watching the morning sun crest over the horizon, the mountain, the water, wherever that happens to be. So with much gratitude, with open hearts, with clear hearts, and with humble hearts, we call on Divine Creator, Great Spirit, Great Mystery, to open the way for this ritual conversation to occur. With much gratitude, we begin. And I'd like to acknowledge those First Nation peoples of the ground on which I sit here where I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and acknowledge the Cherokee. And we thank you for leaving your medicine in the ground so that we too may remember and connect with the dreaming of the earth and remember those ancient ways of relationship and being in right relationship with all peoples, human and non-human peoples. And invite you wherever you are, wherever you have your feet planted in that special place in nature, to acknowledge those First Nation peoples of that land and their original dreaming that led us into this place. With much gratitude, we welcome you. Ashe. And turning toward sunrise, we turn toward that place of new beginnings, a place of fresh new starts, that place on the medicine wheel where we have let go of the old stories and we begin to dream once again with curiosity, with wonderment, with innocence. The place of casting our vision ahead so that we may walk forward into it. We call upon the good medicine people of the sunrise, the good medicine people of these new beginnings. And we invite you into this circle to awaken within each one of us that bone memory, that medicine where you live as well. With much gratitude, we welcome you. Ashe. Quarter turn, we turn toward the noonday sun. As the earth rolls forward, the sun moves across the sky. In this hemisphere, we turn towards the south. We turn to that place of manifesting our visions, that place of right action, that place of the warrior, that place of passion and purpose, movement and dance, that place where we bring our visions into form, where we make it real for the people to see, as once spoken by Black Elk, a native elder from this land. We call upon the good medicine people from the south to awaken within each one of us that bone memory, that medicine where you live as well. With much gratitude, we welcome you. Ashe. Once again, we quarter turn to the right in this place. And in this hemisphere, we're now facing west. We orient ourselves toward the west, to the place where the sun sets, to the place where we begin to dream, the place where we turn toward the harvest and receiving nourishment and our ability to offer nourishment to others. We turn towards the darkening night, toward transformation and change. And we step into that dark night with much gratitude. We call upon the good medicine people of the West to bring us and awaken within us that bone memory where you live as well. With much gratitude, we welcome you. Ashe. And quarter turn to the right once again, we face the north in this hemisphere. We face the sacred mountain. We face the place on the wheel where we begin to let go. Matter of fact, we let go so deeply that spring simply shows up because we let go enough. We turn to that place of dreaming, of abundance, of prayerfulness, of grace. And we welcome the good medicine from the north, from the dark night, from the deep winter, the good medicine to awaken within each one of us that bone memory that lives within each of us. With much gratitude, we welcome you. Ashe. And turning towards the center of the wheel, we face skyward to Sky Nation, to Grandmother Moon and Grandfather Sun. Grandmother Moon, we thank you with much gratitude for reminding us on those certain nights, those dark nights, those new moon nights, that often when it is darkest, there is a light we cannot see. And Grandmother Moon, we also thank you for those teachings of how to bring those things that we hold in shadow and bring them into the light over and over and over again. Those things that are sometimes difficult to talk about, to bring them into the light with each other in community. Grandfather Sun, we thank you for showing up every day, even when it's difficult. We thank you for teaching us how to fall down 7 times and get up 8, always 8. And to our star sisters and brothers and others, we acknowledge you this day, and we thank you for shining down your light upon us, reminding us too that we can shine as a beacon of light by the way we live our lives, so that you can see us from out there. So with much gratitude to the great above, to the great mystery, to expansiveness and endless possibility, we welcome the good medicine from the great above to awaken that stardust within each of us, so that we too can remember. With much gratitude, we welcome you. Ashe. Kneeling down, we touch the earth. We touch this place of home, this place of belonging, this place of soil and soul that come together and go by our own individual names, weaving together like sweetgrass. Our name, our ancestry, and the lands of our ancestors come together as one in this place where we touch the soil and remember. So we thank you, Pachamama. We thank you for this great remembering. We thank you for your dreaming. We thank you for dreaming us all into this place. And may we too remember the dreaming of the earth by the way we live our lives. With much gratitude, we welcome you. Ashe. We call upon the realm of the ancestors, those 7 generations that stand behind us, those 7 generations that stand in front of us. We thank you for dreaming us into this place, and we thank you for your footprints and your heartbeats, now buried in the soil, dust on the wind, left on this planet. We thank you for your laughter and your teardrops, your dreams, your stories. And may we carry those stories into our lives with new dreams in a way that feeds all our people well, both in this world and in the other. With much gratitude, we acknowledge those ancestors. And to those ancestors that are arriving here even this day, this moment, and soon to arrive here, may the way in which we live our lives be a prayer for you that you can recognize when you arrive here. And we thank you for that trust and that accountability in how we live our lives. With much gratitude, we acknowledge you. And to the spirits of the land that surround you, where you sit, where you stand, where you listen right now, we acknowledge those ones, the mountain spirits, the rivers, the oceans, the stone people, the standing tall people, the swimmers in the rivers, the crawlers on the earth, the 4-leggeds and 2-leggeds and winged ones of these lands that surround us all. We thank you for helping us remember that we too are not separate, and that we have a place in the circle of creation as well. With much gratitude, we welcome you. Ashe. And to the great council that sits on the other side of the fires, stirring the coals and keeping them hot, we thank you on that great council. We thank you for tending the fires on the other side. and for keeping them burning. We thank you for standing by us, even when we struggle and stumble and fall and have a hard time standing by ourselves over here. Have a hard time standing and holding space for each other on this side. We thank you for continuing to do so over there. And may the way in which we live our lives here on this planet at this time be a blessing to all of our peoples, human and non-human, with much gratitude. Blessed be. All right, so if we open our eyes now, and maybe you feel like you still have a foot in that other realm, trying to focus at your computer for a moment. That's the way I often feel after doing that. It's like part of me's got a foot there and a foot here, and hopefully the foot over there will give me something adequate to say here for all of you. So may the ancestors give me words that are not just my own, and give me ears that are not just my own. And let's see what happens.
Beautiful. Thank you. That was such a beautiful invitation. Thank you, Kedar. So the topic you bring today is Echoes of the Ancestors, Listening to Earth's Dreaming. I love the title, I must say. The Earth's Dreaming is essentially what this event is all about, isn't it?
Yes.
From hearing talks and interviews you've given in the past and what I understand about the amazing work you're doing, there's an important part of it that revolves around bringing people to a shift in perspective on everything around us, from basically from a rational, theoretical, and I'd say limiting way of interacting with the world, our environment, the people, to discovering there's much more. And you teach about how we can enter into a two-way relationship with that. I feel this is such an important piece of what we're remembering in these times. So please, would you share with us about that shift? How does it happen and why is it so important?
I'll start with why it's important. I think we have forgotten over many hundreds, thousands of years likely, forgotten how to be in right relationship with ourselves, each other, creation. And what now, how I imagine most people operate in the world from the perspective that they look out at the world is from a physics perspective. I would say it's kind of like old Newtonian particle physics that places human on a pinnacle and everything else kind of separate from us and underneath us. And it's almost like that habitual way of perceiving that creates an illusion of separateness. I always like to give the example and talk about how, before language was written, it was these oral traditions or tonal languages. And so story and how story was passed on in relationship to story was an essential way of being in relationship with creation. And stories were not seen as fixed entities. I heard once on your land there in Africa, in West Africa, I understood it said if you understand the story, then the story is dead and has nothing more to offer you. And that the purpose is not understanding stories, but to be in relationship with stories. So that when listening to, say, medicine stories, maybe we'll get into some of those today, when you hear a medicine story, it's not that you are able to understand it, wrap it up in some belief and construct of meaning and place it on a shelf. And it's more of like, at this moment in your life, where does the story reach out and pull you in? What engages you in the story? Where does your attention stop in the story, even though a story keeps moving? Or where do you enter the story, even though it started 5 minutes ago and you weren't really in it, and then you came in? Something happened there. Or where in a story do you leave the story? And where do you go when you leave that story? And so these ways of seeing stories more animistically as something to be in relationship with. So going back to language, and then when language became written symbols, it's an interesting understanding that I was received in the Highlands of Scotland um, when somebody was telling me about the word spelling. And she said, no, the beginning of that word, when language was transferring from oral traditions and storytelling traditions and tonal languages to written symbols, like in my Celtic tradition, we'd have in Ireland the Agam stones, or these symbols connected with trees. But when symbols became presented, there was highly suspect that if you understood a symbol, that you had some kind of soul, some secret power that you might have over others. And so symboling language was almost seen as casting a spell, like you were spelling somebody. And so the word spelling, as we think about it, came from this ancient, maybe in the witch traditions of ancient, of spelling someone, because you could take this image and communicate something. So language informs perception, and shared language informs shared perception. And unfortunately, shared perceptions we often take and we wrap them up into certain meanings and beliefs that become fixed and trap us. We trap ourselves in the story we tell ourselves about ourselves, or the story we tell ourselves about others. And so they are not open and living and fluid. And so one example that I love to say that shows how language informs perception, as I say, it's the greatest, there's two great mass delusions on the planet. And when I say it, people will recognize, oh yeah, that's kind of what I see. That's the language and that's how I see it. One is called sunrise and one is called sunset. And so with that languaging, we perceive a certain way that the sun moves when in fact it doesn't. It's certainly simpler than talking about Earth rolling on a certain axis with a certain tilt. That's way too much to say. But how language, how we speak our language informs our perception. And and then the other thing I would say, part of the problem these days is we live in societies and cultures where probably more than any other time in human evolution, we humans like to talk about ourselves. I've noticed in indigenous cultures, they don't really do ceremony and ritual and then have a discussion about it. They just, you're in it, it happens, it's very fluid. You maybe even not saw it coming. Um, and as a result, we tend to psychologize our reality. I get permission to say that since that was my schooling and growing up and going to school and learning how to psychologize the world and reality. And then I learned to unpsychologize it when I started working with people like Melodoma and Rocking Bear and other indigenous folks, where they didn't even speak in that way. They didn't even speak in an object relations disconnected way of seeing ourselves in creation. And what I noticed is they spoke from a much more animistic languaging and perceiving. It wasn't even, for us, we have to make the shift towards seeing an alive, interactive, relational experience with nature, with Earth. And but for people that move in the realm of perceiving animistically, an animate universe, an animate world, is very living, is very interactive, and it's very fluid. So as a result, most of the indigenous languages that I've come to understand probably have 3 times the use of more verbs than we have with nouns. Nouns tend to object relation things and separate us from things. And with verbs, we tend to be in a relational interaction. So I'm just kind of laying the groundwork of understanding the field of perception that we mostly operated in. And if we think about normative consciousness across the whole spectrum of human evolution, I would say, just guessing that 1/10 of 1% of normative consciousness as we think about it today is kind of what we think of today as being what reality is. And that 99.9% of normative consciousness was really grounded in animism, this way of seeing an alive, interactive, relational connection with nature, with earth, with the elementals, in a way that was that required reciprocity, as opposed to how when we objectify our relationships, they shift toward more of a commodity. What can it do for us? What does it mean for us? Even our psychological language looks at nature and says, oh, what is the metaphor that this is saying to me? Without even understanding that there's something beyond my own projections and metaphors of looking at creation, that it has its own language, its own perceiving, its own way of being that doesn't require my projection or metaphor. So this shift in consciousness of simply reciprocity, where we begin to, when I talk about ceremony, you begin ceremony with, say on land, going to land, of introducing self, asking permission, making an offering, the way that you would if you visited an elder, you would take an offering. And so it begins with gratitude, it begins with offering, that if we're asking something of creation, that we are making an offering in return. So it is this separateness that is, or this illusion of separateness that has put us in this state of turmoil, of disconnection, and that we begin to treat the earth, to treat nature, to treat the natural world around us in a very disconnected way, as if it has nothing to do with us, as opposed to that we are an extension of it. We are an aspect of the dreaming of the earth. And so conferences like the one you're offering here, Clara, is like it's a conference to help people make that shift back. That's why I was loved being a part of it, is to, if we start to listen again, what is this dreaming? And I would say, in order to anchor ourselves more clearly to dreaming a new earth, we must first anchor ourselves relationally to the dreaming of the earth and let it move through us. And that is like simple things of being in relationship with those ones on your land where you live, the tree in the park down the road, that it goes from being a category of tree to maybe the kind of tree, the actual name of the species of tree or plant. And I would say even there's one step further, that there was a time before we had these names where we were simply in relationship with these beings, because once we name something, we step back. We give it a name that's, as I say, not a verb, but more of a noun, and we pull back from being in relationship with it. So one of the invitations is when you walk around your backyard or your park, or and you encounter aspects of nature, animals, birds, trees, plants, water, the very soil that you're walking on, that you first learn the names, that it goes, because a categorical way of naming something is almost the worst way of separating yourself. and then the naming of it brings you closer in. However, if the name is a noun as opposed to a verb, there's still a separateness. And so what I invite people many times is take a walk in nature and forget the names of everything and watch what happens. You like see with the eyes of a child who doesn't have names. And trees do interesting things when you don't have a name for them. They become alive in our perception. And sunlight and raindrops and spider webs and everything, when we suspend the names and just hold it in our perceptual awareness, there's a living relational exchange of energy that happens in doing so. And to make an offering. Making offerings can simply be gratitude. Thank you. It could be a song. It could be a prayer. It could be a little bit of sweetgrass or a little bit of tobacco. Or often when I'm in nature and I need to cut a little branch from, say, a cedar tree to construct as a ceremonial piece, if I don't have anything with me, I tell people part of the reason I have all this hair is I can just reach up and cut a piece and have a good exchange and say, thank you, cedar, for a little branch from your tree to help me with this ceremony. So there's this understanding of reciprocity. So I laid the framework for our conversation that to kind of step out of psychologizing our reality or seeing it in that old Newtonian physics particle way, and realize that that it's all connected and it's all relational and we're not separate. And a few strategies of how to engage in that way.
Right. Wonderful. Yeah, as you were saying, I think much of the challenges we experience in our personal lives, I feel, stem from having become so disconnected from ourselves and the essence of things, what's truly important. And on the healing journey that we're all being, to varying degrees, being pulled onto, the concept of belonging comes up a lot, as Mary Oliver would say, finding our place in the family of things.
Yes.
Can you share a little about that and how you understand belonging?
I understand earth, soil, ground as belonging. In the ritual work I do with people, when they're sharing a story with me and I hear aspects of the story that have to do with a felt sense of disconnection or disassociation from self, from ancestors, from land. When I work, because I often do my work with people outdoors, I have noticed that in conversations where there is an expression of some kind of disconnection, the person subconsciously will reach out and put their hand on the ground and start to, often I move where there's a lot of soil where I work with people, and they'll just start to talk and fiddle their fingers in the earth or the soil, and I watch that, and I notice there's the way that earth offers, not earth as earth spirit, but earth as earth medicine. Like in doing earth rituals where people are placed in a deeper connection, physical connection with earth, that it speaks to healing these places of disconnection, of belonging. And earth also is a medicine that remedies illusions of scarcity. I think those two primary places of challenge for people, working with earth and ritual is a way to address illusions of scarcity, of self not being enough, or that there's not enough, and the illusion and the dilemma of disconnection from ourselves. Let's see if I have a little. Reach over here to my table beside me and grab this little prop, this little piece of sweetgrass. And I always use this as a prop. I say, think of this one strand here as being your individual identity. And then think of this strand here in the center as being your ancestral identity. And then think of this strand here as being your identity that is connected with soil, this place of soil and soul, this place of land. And that there was a time in our lineage where our personal identity and our ancestral identity and our connection to the lands of our ancestors were wrapped together like this. And that how we identified ourselves could not be done so without naming, I am so-and-so, I am from the house of, or these people from this land, like they were woven. And it was one thing. And so this way that the faces of earth, as in the active ingredients in a particular ritual that involves earth, often for people addresses the need for connection, the need for belonging, belonging within oneself, healing the traumas that we personally carry, belonging within our body, belonging within our connection to others, to lineage, and then to land. So my sense is that the way that we are as a collective species able to destroy and disregard the planet as if it were a separate entity, a separate thing that is here to serve us or give us stuff, is because we have become separated. And so first we have to acknowledge and heal the traumas that we carry individually. Maybe through our own biography of our life, the traumas that have happened, or maybe ancestrally, that we also carry ancestral traumas that aren't personal to our own life story in this time, but predate our birth. We carry those as well from our bloodlines. And so the healing of these things are required in order to realize this other connection. I definitely say in my own life, as I worked on healing personal trauma and ancestral trauma, that my compassion and awareness and connection to the natural world around me just extended. I could see that it wasn't separate. So when in ritual, when we think about working with the elements, I think of the elements as what we call the active ingredients to ritual. It's like in medicine we get at the pharmacy, there's active ingredients. Well, the elements are the active ingredients. And if there's no element present, there's something missing. And earth as a medicinal quality of a ritual conversation of healing, earth speaks to us of belonging. It is brought into ritual as the medicinal, that which is necessary to heal places of disconnection with self, with other, human and non-human. So I've come to look at earth, the many faces of earth, when we talk about the spirit of earth. And then there's the medicinal quality that soil and earth offer. And why would one even need to do an earth ritual that would involve soil? As I say, it often comes in to address issues of scarcity, not enoughness in our perception with ourselves or others, or issues of disconnection. So, earth is our home. Earth is our belonging. Earth is our great community. And soil and soul are woven together and walk around by the different names we call ourselves. So yeah, we are an extension of the dreaming of the earth in that way.
Which leads me to the question of community. Why is community so important? You speak of the human and the non-human. So speaking of community in the sense of not just our human relations, but everything. everyone, every being. Now in these
Right.
times, and we know it's always been important.
Right. So this idea of community um, and connection, and the more we tend to, out of illusions of scarcity, we tend to narrow this thing called community into a very defined club. Oh, that'd be the worst version. It becomes a club, and clubs have a certain set of agreements that you have to go by, or you're not in the club. And community requires healthy conflict and diversity, because that's the mechanisms of evolution, as opposed to a set of rules of agreement of getting to belong or not belong.
Mm.
So, in community for our ancient ancestors included not simply the living, but the realm of the ancestors. That was just when you said community, you included, you know, my grandmother, my grandfather. For me now, my mother and father who are on the other side. It's like that's part of the community. And so we would always include them in a prayer over dinner, or we include them in acknowledgement of gratitude. Um, it would be it's would be seen kind of odd to not include them to many ancient cultures. And then the other aspect of the non-human community, and when I talked about animism versus the psychologizing of reality, um, this way of recognizing that we are part of this greater community, this greater web of life, and that too is our people, the human and non-human people, the living and non-living people. That community is all of this. And then, in order to bring in a good dose of responsibility, I invite you to see community as a verb, as an action, not as a thing, uh, that just kind of as an entity, but as a living verb of action. And so, what is community? It is love in action. That's what community is. Love in action. Um, or as my teacher would say, that love is an action. Um, and so this way of taking the things and making them living again, and bringing responsibility of action to them. Um, and spending time remembering. It takes time to reactivate this kind of connection. Um, I say if you want to make any place sacred, if you have the opportunity to go, if you're in a city, if you can go to a park, if you go into the woods, if you go into nature, and if you sit there long enough and notice every detail of everything around you in your immediate environment, it will become sacred because you gave attention to it, and you notice that it's given attention to you. So that the little squirrel that travels that particular branch does so every morning around 7 o'clock. You know, that's what it does. And that the the hummingbird that lives here at this time of year before it travels south lives in this particular area for a while. Or the a bird, I'm thinking of birds around here, like the cardinal that you see that flies around here in this area, isn't passing through. It actually lives here. Or the butterfly you see in the meadow, if you notice each morning or each time, it tends to have a pattern. It's like it's from here. So we realize, oh, these beings that live here are noticing me. And if I'm still enough and quiet enough, I can notice them noticing me, and we have a relationship. Um, so that way of finding some way to stop the spinning of the mind and the thinking, meditation, prayer, stillness in nature, so that when the thinking stops, what's left is awareness. It's like the job of the mind is not to run your life, by the way. The job of the mind is to record information from previous and give it back to you, help you integrate it, help you understand it, help you restory your own existence, or to strategize a plan of action for something you see coming down the road. So the mind gets engaged and starts to strategize a plan of action, a roadmap, or a way to respond. But other than that, the mind actually should not be running the show. Your awareness should be what's engaged. Present moment awareness to what's around you.
And it's that two-way relation, that reciprocal relationship that in there lies big medicine and transformation, right?
Yes. Yeah, they say God is in the details, I heard once said.
Yeah.
Like, notice in there that there is in the stillness, in the context of present moment awareness, that you can touch in the entire creation of life just by noticing something very, very distinctly. And do that thing I mentioned earlier about, like, forget the name of it, so you don't separate yourself from it, and just study the qualities of it and watch what happens in that experience, that relationship.
So in that transformative journey, we are remembering the gift of medicine that we carry for community, right?
Yes.
There's a lot that you work with around that. Would you share a little?
Yeah, I think of true learning is really remembering. And that you'll have that experience that when you find something that you're very fascinated about and you start to kind of, I want to know more about this, and you start down that road, it doesn't feel like learning. It feels like somehow I know this. I didn't have these words for it, but it's so familiar to me. I know it in my bones. And we say that when you know something in your bones, it's ancestral. It's a knowing that's older than you in this body. And so to know something in your bones is to access a collective knowing, an ancestral knowing that is, and you start remembering. The way in my conversations with Meladoman about these two paradigms of perspective, he said that in modernity, and I'll talk about over here in the West, certainly in the modernity here in the West, when one is born, they're born into a society that has its own societal myths that it operates by. And as Joseph Campbell once said, if you want to know your society's myths, look around and see what the tallest buildings are. And that'll tell you what the myths of your society are. And if they're the economic structures, the consumer centers, the business banking centers, there's your society's myths. And then, so being born into modernity, what society does is says it looks toward you to say, how can you be in service to this mythology that we have here? And if you happen to fit, if you came into the world carrying that kind of medicine, like a banker or someone that fits well into that paradigm, you won't notice that you're simply taking on the mythology of the society around you. Much harder for people that don't match well with their society's myths, especially artists and the creatives don't easily match into society's myths and what they want from each person. But your aptitude and your interests will be measured as an early child, and then you'll be given at some point essentially occupational handbook to choose from and fit into a paradigm. But consider this other way of thinking that would say you came here from the realm of the ancestors. And it was as if you looked here and said, there's trouble afoot down there, and I have this medicine, this gift that I want to bring that will be helpful. And then you look around your various ancestral bloodlines and say, and I'm going to need your help and your help and your help and your help, because you carry the same medicine that I'm going to take down there. And so I'm going to come in through these bloodlines and hopefully hold on to the medicine and the blessings of those lines so that when I get there I can start remembering what I'm here to do, who I'm here to be. And so rites of passage initiations are designed, what I say, the way I look at it, they're really designed to activate the memory of those agreements. Who am I? What am I here to offer my people? And as I spoke of Black Elk's name earlier, one of the Native American folks from this continent, he said, it's easy for anybody to go up on the mountain and have a vision. Anybody can do that. He said, but we don't say you had a vision until you make it real for people to see. Then we'll say you had a vision. So there's this way of going into nature, as all the great beginnings to all the religions of the world began with somebody going into the wilderness to fast and pray and seek vision. And then mostly what they're noted for in their lives is what they did when they returned from the desert, from the mountain, from under the Bodhi tree. Those figures that then created, were responsible for these different spiritual traditions. So this way of going into nature and fasting and seeking vision under the guidance of elders and returning with having remembered the medicine that you came here to offer. And then your giveaway is how you live your life as you move forward with that medicine. So that when, in Melodelma's words, so when I go to meet my ancestors, I don't want to show up there with having brought back everything I took down there with me. I want to leave it all. I want to put it in the ground so somebody else can dig it up one day and find it and make use of it. And so when I return to the realm of the ancestors, I want to have left everything there that I came to leave, and not just wasted my time in needless dramas of scarcity and better and less than thinking. And so it's a different shift in paradigm that says, yes, you have a gift that we need. You have a gift that we need. And our job is to, as a village, as a community, is to help extract, to pull that out of you through the ceremonies, rituals, rites of passage, or even simply a good teacher that recognizes that every person carries something of a genius or a genie in them that is to be cultivated and brought forward to feed the people. So it's this way that we need community to draw out our gifts, to call them out in us, and to deliver them to. And if you're, I think it was, who is it? Carl Gustav Jung, and psychoanalysis, that whole practice of psychoanalysis that. And then later, Joanna Macy, who many people may recognize that name, re-spoke the phrase. She said, everyone is born with one great question that they carry. And if you can find that question in your life, it will carry you in a good way across your lifespan. In the way that you can identify the great question that you carry is, think of that place where your passion intersects with the needs of your people, that crossroads. And at that crossroads is the place where you have the most healing to offer, and you receive, in doing so, the most healing in return. And so, so it's a way of looking at the great questions that we carry, or what is the great question that we carry, and how do we live into that question across our life in a way that is becomes an offering. So it's a different way of even looking at questions and answers. As it's not the answers that offer us the most use sometimes. It's actually a better question that we can live into across time, that needs to be spoken to, like this summit and connecting once again, dreaming the new earth.
Wonderful. The work you do with Rites of Passage Council involves a lot of ceremony. You share a little about the importance of ceremony.
Ceremony is a conversation between the worlds to enact healing and change in both worlds. That would be kind of my definition of what ceremony or ritual, if I speak of ceremony and ritual synonymously. And there are radical forms of ritual and status forms. Status ritual is simply nothing really changes. We go to it, we do it. It's choreographed completely all the way from start to finish, and there's no imagination required. There's no listening required. It's just kind of one thing to the next. Going to church could kind of become that way for people, where it's just kind of a thing you do, but nothing really shifts. Radical ritual, radical ceremony is an experience of a shift in consciousness. It is entering into an invocation to something greater than ourselves that guides us, that's available to us, to show up and lead us across the territory of this threshold we're in, or how to navigate a threshold when we don't know. And so we reach out to something greater than ourselves. We invoke it, we call upon that source. And then we listen. This is probably the most important part. We listen and take in something that's more than simply our own intellect and our own resourcefulness. And so the importance of ritual and ceremony are to activate conversations with source of wisdom and guidance through nature. And nature is the threshold communicator of these sources. And then begin to listen, to hopefully discover what is the third thing in a time that we live in now, where everything is getting, even our struggles are getting binary. It's this group or that group, or this way of being or that way. It's like, no, there's a third way that we can't notice if we're just focusing on this one or that one. And how do we make ourselves available to be able to pay attention to a third way? Again, through meditation, through prayer, through connection with nature and stillness, where the focus is really put on listening and paying attention, than on strategizing.
And that's essentially how we reconnect to the dreaming of the earth.
Yeah. This by listening. There's a ritual that sometimes prescribed for people about how to activate that relationship, and it would. So here's a suggested ritual, an action that one could take, and you might have to adjust it somewhat for where you live. But if possible, where you live, to create an earth shrine. It's simply a mound of earth. Ideally, if you have a place around you where you can find a two-trunked tree, and at the base of that two-trunked tree, just make a simple mound of earth. Just mound it up right there. Or in your garden, if you don't have that and you have a little garden, just somewhere where you can take some soil and create a mound of earth that doesn't have to be very big at all. And then to weave together, if you have sweetgrass or some form of grass that might be worked with in ceremony, to weave together 3 strands and know that what you're weaving together, think of your individual self, your ancestral self, soul, and your connection to soil, to land, like the lands of your ancestors. You like weave that together, bury that into the mound. Also in the mound, bury a ring. What we call it an earth ring, whatever that means to you. Rings are about relationship. So you bury all this into the mound with a prayer to your understanding of Creator and whatever that language is for you, and be honoring of your own traditions when you speak an invocation, and ask that that Creator, that great mystery, restore your connection to the dreaming of the earth. And once these things are placed in the soil, ideally if you can do so on the night of a new moon. New moon's the dark times about beginning. I always say things don't begin with the light, actually things begin in the dark. And to do it on the night of a new moon, to place the braided sweetgrass or grass and then the ring, maybe slip it over the braid, bury it in there, and leave it in there for those 3 dark nights. Keep a dream journal, listen to your dreams. At the end of the 3 dark nights, to go and extract the ring from the soil and put it on. And again, start paying attention to shifts in perspective of connection, belonging, shift in perspectives of moving out of the feeling of scarcity or not enoughness that comes from operating in that paradigm of better and less than thinking. And then start tracking your dreaming. So that our dreaming is reconnected with the original dreaming of the planet that dreamed us all into being here. And so that's a recommended ritual prescription to deepen your relationship with the dreaming of the earth.
Beautiful. Beautiful suggestion. Thank you for that.
And adapt it however you might need to, given on where you live.
And finally, Kedar, what is your wish or your personal prayer for the new earth? This is something I'm asking all the speakers, and I'd love to hear yours.
Personal prayer is that that you remember, that we all remember our way home. That we all remember our way home. Home to ourselves, home to each other, home to this planet. That's my prayer.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Kedar. This has been wonderful. Before we go, I believe you have a gift for our audience. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yes, if so, the link that'll be in the made available. The gift is to a story called Singing Stone, and it is done with the accompaniment of a drum. That's why I call it a drumming story. And it's a story of the initiatory journey of remembering. That moves around the medicine wheel, remembering your name. I think I'd like to end with a poem that comes to mind. That when I think about this summit, when I think about that story, I think about a poem that's called "The Door" by Adrienne Rich. There is a door. You can go through this door or you can not go through. If you go through, there's always a risk of remembering your name. Things will look at you doubly, and you must look back and let them happen. If you do not go through, it is still possible to maintain your attitudes, to live a worthy life, and to even die bravely. However, much will blind you, and much will evade you. And at what cost, who knows? The door itself makes no promises. It's only a door. So may this conference be such a door for those that are listening.
Wonderful. And just to clarify, the link to Kedar's gift will be below the video, as well as the website for Rites of Passage Council. Do check out the amazing work they do. Kedar, it's been such a pleasure and an honor to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a real joy to be here. I wish you all well.
Thank you. And to all those who have tuned in today, deep gratitude for your time, your presence. Have a beautiful day.
Go well.